of generations of our peoples, those who during centuries was building and defending Russia. Suvorov, Rumyantsev and Ushakov were fighting our grandfathers and great-grandfathers were fighting during the Great Patriotic War. We will always remember those who did not put up in 2014, who died for their right to speak their language, for the right of preserve their culture, to live, the fighters of Donbass and of Khatyn, those mercenaries, civilians, Ukrainians, Russians, peoples of different nationalities. Alexander Zakharchenko, leader of Donetsk, and Olga Kachur, Alexei Mozgovoy, prosecutor of Lugansk, Gorenko, Nurmagomedov, and all our military who died during the special military operation. They are heroes. Heroes of great Russia, and I ask you to honor their memory with a minute of silence. Thank you.
Has been made by Vladimir Putin, where Luhansk and Donetsk, formerly now part of Russia, is the announcement, and Kherson and Zaporizhia have been declared independent regions. Swasti Rao, what does this imply? Ambassador Sajanhar is also with us. Ambassador Sajanhar, what does this imply? There are two points of view. There are 2 points of view here. One is the Russia point of view. One is the NATO and the West point of view. The nation that's been destroyed, disrupted, not just buried under debris, but also now debt, huge amounts of debt, is Ukraine.
So, Anand, I think there is a Russian point of view, definitely. And the other point of view is not a Western and American point of view. I think that is a point of view that is shared by a large majority of the world. What Mr. Putin is saying is violation of UN principles, UN Charter, which speak about respecting the territorial integrity and sovereignty of countries. This is a total violation of the UN principles. The UN Secretary General has spoken against it. I have mentioned a large number of countries which are purported to be very good friends and allies and partners of Russia. As I mentioned, even countries like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan. Kazakhstan is a member of the CSTO. It's a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. It's a member of the Eurasian Economic Union, which is a Russia-led organization. All these countries, none of these countries is going to agree to what Mr. Putin has done. I think, let's face it, there are about 23-24% people of Russian origin in Kazakhstan. And there have been statements that have been made in Russia by no less person than Dmitry Medvedev, who's been the former president and prime minister. And he has said that Kazakhstan is an artificial state. And this is the similar sort of comment that was made by Mr. Putin as far as Ukraine is concerned. Now, these countries are definitely not going to agree with what Mr. Putin has done. What it's going to do, it is further turmoil, further turbulence, further insecurity, further uncertainty. And Mr. Putin has said it's not a bluff.
We are seeing, Ambassador Sajanhar, we are seeing, would you agree, disagree that we are not looking at, we are looking at the effect. Nobody condones what Mr. Vladimir Putin has done or President Putin has done. But the fact is that he has turned around and told these nations that I am going to do whatever it is, and that's what he sold to his own constituency, that I am doing it to protect the sovereign interest of Russia. That's why I said there is a Russia point of view. Yes, the worldview may differ from Russia at this point, but the cause is not Vladimir Putin on American soil or in the Pacific close to America or in Cuba. When Russia moved into Cuba to work with Cuba, America threatened the Monroe Act and also threatened nuclear strikes. You remember this. This is documented. Vladimir Putin's position is, what is Vladimir Putin's position? His position is that what is NATO doing in my backyard? Why is NATO still existing when there is no Warsaw? What is this strategic security partnership that America signed with Ukraine on the 10th of November 2021, after which Putin said that I am left with no other option but to move into it militarily. Now it's all gone down south and not according to Mr. Putin's plan or anybody else's plan. A nation's been destroyed. Its maps been redrawn. Its land has been annexed or grabbed, as US calls it. But there is a cause to it. What caused it has to be the question.
No, you're very right, Anand, when you say this. When you mention Cuba, it was no attack was launched, a threat was made. And I think similarly, if there had been sort of, that sort of a threat, there had been some negotiations, a mutually acceptable solution. But, here for Mr. Putin to say, and I think much of the world believes that there was an existential threat to Russia. Russia, which has a total area of 17.9 million square kilometers, it is more than double the size of the United States or of China. I don't think Russia ever faced any existential threat. There might have been sort of, some war here and there, some skirmishes,
The biggest significance, Ambassador Sajjanar, is that their window to the world, that means via sea trade or warm water access, was the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. And did that strategic partnership or that agreement between America and Ukraine threaten Russia's access to the warm waters? These are the only two warm water accesses they have outside of the Pacific, on the far-flung corner there near Vladivostok. But in this part of Russia, the Central Asian part of Russia, did not have any access to warm water. There are multiple angles to it and aspects to it. We'll discuss this more at length. I've run out of time at this point here on The Nation at 5. Ambassador Sajjanar, thank you very much. We'll take this forward later tonight on The Right Stand. Viewpoint with Zakana.
Hello and welcome to Viewpoint. I'm Zakir Jacob. After days of drama around the Congress presidential election, we today finally have clarity on who the contest is going to be between. It's going to be between Shashi Tharoor, who is the unofficial candidate, the rebel candidate. Some are even calling him the G23 candidate, where we don't even know if such a thing now exists after today's developments. And then there is the official candidate, the family candidate, the Gandhi clan-backed candidate, who is Mallikarjun Kharge. Some very, very pertinent questions arise. Mr. Kharge is being seen as the candidate who has the blessings of the family. Will any of these 9,000-odd PCC delegates dare to vote against the family? More importantly, what happens to the G23? Because everyone on the G23 side, from a Bhupinder Hooda to a Manish Tiwari, they have all been proposers of Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge's candidature. Even though Shashi Tharoor thinks that he's part of the G23, fact is that many of the G23 members have signed and proposed Mr. Kharge's name. So, the question that begs to be asked, if the point of this entire exercise was that the family will not back any candidate, it's going to be an open, free and fair election, will that come to pass? Because everyone in the Congress and everyone in the country knows that 80-year-old Mr. Kharge is the chosen one.
It's the most expected twist in the race for Congress's next president. There won't be a Gandhi in the top post for the first time in more than 20 years, but the Parivar has made sure their man is in the running. Mallikarjun Kharge, leader of opposition in the Rajya Sabha and a through and through Gandhi loyalist, filed his nomination today.
मुझे जो सहकार मिला उनको, उसलिए उनका फिर एक बार मैं आभारी हूं। कांग्रेस पार्टी के जो उसूल हैं, जो आइडियोलॉजी है, उस आइडियोलॉजी के साथ मैं बचपन से जुड़ा हूं।
From the looks of it, Congress ka haath is with Kharge. Apart from getting the Gandhis' blessings, Kharge walked into the AICC with signatures of 30 proposers who were some of the most prominent names in the party, including Rajasthan Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot, who was the first choice of the Gandhis for the top post up until his rebellion last week. Another proposer was Digvijaya, who up until the morning of the nomination had declared that he too was in the race.
उनसे मैंने पूछा था कि आप अगर फॉर्म भर रहे हो तो मैं नहीं भरूंगा। उनका इरादा है फॉर्म भरने का, तो मैंने कहा कि ठीक है, मैं आपका प्रस्तावक बनूंगा।
Kharge will be going up against Shashi Tharoor, a 3-time member of parliament and a former union minister. Unlike Kharge, Tharoor wasn't flanked by the who's who of Congress when he filed his nomination papers.
I was not prepared for the extraordinarily enthusiastic collection of Congress workers. I have a vision for the Congress, for the internal reorganization of the Congress, which I will be sending to every one of the 9,100 and odd delegates.
A Gandhi loyalist versus a member of the G23. Are the odds stacked against Shashi Tharoor?
Kharge ji will be elected. In fact, my appeal is that he should be elected unanimously.
Okay, you want Mr. Tharoor to be withdrawing from the contest?
I think it would be in the fitness of things.
Is this a democratic election to lead a party that is going through its worst ever crisis, or just a friendly fight? And at the end of the day, will the next Congress chief simply be a proxy of the Gandhi family?
I want to first go across to Pallavi Ghosh, our senior editor, who's been tracking the Congress party for a number of years now. Pallavi, initially, the whole purpose of this election was that no Gandhi should stand, and more importantly, the family should not be seen as endorsing any candidate. And up until last evening, it seemed the case. But this morning, with Mr. Kharge's candidature and Digvijaya Singh withdrawing, now it's very apparent to anyone that Mr. Kharge, and I'm not, blaming him, I'm not, chastising him. The fact is that everyone in the Congress party knows he is the quote-unquote family candidate.
Absolutely. In fact, Zaka, if you just go through a sequence of events, and the points I give out is how the process itself explains why it doesn't seem to be a real election. I mean, Mrs. Gandhi, whenever she's met any top leader, whether it's K.C. Venugopal, even Ashok Gehlot, even Shashi Tharoor, she would keep telling them, I am neutral. I don't have any favorites. I'm not approving or disapproving of anyone. You all decide who wants to contest. But the moment Ashok Gehlot, in a sense, rebelled, I think that was the time when a call was taken by Mrs. Gandhi with a very close group of leaders around her that we have to teach him a lesson. Therefore, if you remember Mukul Vasnik, on the day he goes across to meet Mr. Gehlot, he takes a message from Mrs. Gandhi to him that please do not file your nomination papers, and that is what you should be telling her. So when he finally did meet Sonia Gandhi, Mr. Gehlot himself tells her that if you don't want me to contest, I won't. She says, okay, my advice to you ideally is don't contest. So that I think that was the first step when she decided to intervene in the electoral process, and that's when the hunt began for a reliable, the right person with the right credentials. And it was after much deliberations late last night at a meeting with Rahul Gandhi and Priyanka Gandhi Vadra that Mallikarjun Kharge's name was singled upon. A.K. Antony, I'm told, was supposed to go back to Kerala. He was made to stay back one extra day only so that he also signs as a proposer for Mallikarjun Kharge. So these are the events which clearly show that this is not a real election. It's all being micromanaged, it's all being planned. And if you look at what I saw through the day in AICC, there was a method in that madness. Workers coming in, the party media department organizing it, and leaders are being asked to come in and propose his name.
No, the other question that it certainly does raise is, what happened to this G23 rebellion? I mean, every member of that G23, other than the ones who've left, from an Anand Sharma to a Bhupinder Hooda, all of them were there along with Mr. Kharge. So what happens to their rebellion?
But I mean, frankly speaking, Zaka, there's not much left of the G23. I think the first blow they suffered was one when Kapil Sibal left, and second when Ghulam Nabi Azad also left. And since there's been a simmering of anger within a section of the G23 leaders, and some of them are going to start getting vocal. I also think they realize that they cannot have those numbers definitely. Kharge is, for them, a more appropriate candidate, and that's why they decided to support him and not say a Shashi Tharoor, who, if you remember, was actually initially a G23 member.
I guess, as you said, as Kumar Shelja said to you a moment ago, Mr. Tharoor might even, withdraw his nomination. We'll see how this plays out. For the moment, thank you very much. Let me go across to our guest now. Guru Prakash Paswan is national spokesperson of the BJP. Mudit Agarwal is spokesperson of the Congress Party. Shipra Mathur is a senior journalist, and Kapil Madan, political analyst, joining us. Mudit Agarwal, let me start with you, because the whole point of this election was that the Gandhi family is completely staying out of it. They don't have a favorite candidate. None of their family members are going to stand for the CP's post. So it was supposedly a free and fair election. But now with Mr. Kharge, and he's an 80-year-old, it's very apparent to every congressman, every delegate of those 9,000, that Mr. Kharge is the chosen one. So what is the free and fairness in this election?
I mean, you can do whatever conjecture that you want. I mean, media has the right to do that. If you remember, Mrs. Gandhi herself has said she is going to be neutral in these elections, and she is. She does not have a candidate which she has endorsed. See, the people who can, anyone who is a Congress delegate out of 9,000 odd could file their nomination. All they needed was support of 10 delegates. Period. Shashi Tharoor ji had filed. There was never any restriction on anyone else who wanted to file. All you had to do was file a legal nomination paper. So what is the issue?
Mr. Agarwal, are you seriously telling me that all these 9,000 delegates, in fact, the lakhs of your karyakartas in the Congress Party, do not know that Mr. Kharge is the chosen one of the family?
I mean, that's for you to, I mean, you can do whatever guesswork you want to do, but Mrs. Gandhi has said, and is clearly said, that I don't have a candidate in that. And I tend to believe Mrs. Gandhi on that.
No, I would have bought that narrative till last night, when the two candidates were Digvijaya Singh and Shashi Tharoor. And I don't think, to be fair to the family, I don't think they have a bone in this fight, or a dog in this fight, as it were, between Digvijaya Singh and Shashi Tharoor. But once Mr. Kharge's candidature got announced this morning as a last-minute twist, I think it's very apparent who the family is backing.
I think the problem with the media is media wants an election, which Congress Party does, not for the media, but for its internal democratic system. But the problem with the media is the second.
You know, Mr. Agarwal, you can cry till the cows come home about the problem with the media. If I start talking about the problems with the Congress Party, Mr. Agarwal, very humbly, very respectfully, you represent a political party. I have no qualms. I have no qualms. Sir, one second. Just give me, I will give you time to respond. Give me 10 seconds. You do know that I'm one of the most fair anchors on television. Just give me 10 seconds. I have no problems the way you want to run your party. All up to you. You want to run it the way you want to run it, please run it. But in the interests of the health of India's democracy, it is important that we have a strong Congress Party. And unfortunately, the Congress Party had an opportunity with this election by choosing Mr. Kharge, and whether you like it or not, the message has gone down to the rank and file that Mr. Kharge is the chosen one. I think you've squandered that opportunity. That's my limited point. You are free to disagree. Like I said, it's your party. You can run it the way you want.
So at least I think Zaka is going to be democratic enough to give me at least 30 seconds to make that point and not interject.
Sure.
You see, the thing with the media is they look for elections in the Congress, which we do not to show the media, but because we are a democratic party. But the other problem with the media is media wants internal election, but also wants to judge themselves whom they want to be the Congress president. You see, this is very a funny situation. Shashi Tharoor ji is fighting and Mr. Kharge is fighting. It's for the 9,000 delegates now to decide who's going to be the president. I will really congratulate media the day they put the spotlight on BJP internal elections and actually ask BJP, why does Bangaru
I'm asking now. I'm asking to Guru Prakash Paswan right now. Mr. JP Nadda, your party president. One second, let me ask him. You want me to ask this question? I'm asking him right now. In fact, I've asked every BJP spokesperson over the last week. Mr. JP Nadda is going to get his second term. He has not been elected either in the first term or in the likely second term. So what are you, the BJP, talking about internal party elections, Guru Prakash Paswan?
Zaka, I'm going to answer this question, and I'm not going to give certificates to you that whether there's a problem with the media, whether Zaka is an impartial anchor. I'm not going to make any comment on that. But Zaka, we must understand a couple of things beforehand. The AMI Digital tweeted yesterday, and Mr. Digvijaya Singh, former Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, a senior leader of the Congress party, he has gone on record and said, whoever becomes Congress president will work under Gandhi family. This is something what Mr. Digvijaya Singh, a seasoned Congress leader, someone who was himself interested in becoming the president of the Congress party, has gone on record and said. So this is the state of affairs in the Congress party. As far as election in our party is concerned, I did not, Zaka, I did not interfere.
One second, Mr. Agarwal, please, let him finish,
Zaka, this is the respect for democracy and respect for debate what the Congress party says. But yeah, having said that, one more thing. Zaka, if you look at the party present since 1980, the Jansangh becomes the Bharatiya Janata Party. Since 1980 to 2022, look at the list of the presidents of the Bharatiya Janata Party. Since 1980 to 2022, look at the presidents of the Indian National Congress. Only 2 people outside the family. Sitaram Kesri and Sitaram. I did not, sir. Zaka, if you have to do this.
Mudiji, just give him 2 minutes. But Guru, my question was the election of your party president.
Zaka,
go on.
Zaka, I can shout over him, but
no, don't. Yeah, go ahead.
That is not the sanskar of my political party. Thank you so much. Zaka, since 1980 to 2022, how many president in the Congress party outside the family? Only 2. Sitaram Kesri was insulted. The entire country remembers how Sitaram Kesri, a backward community leader, was insulted in the office of the Congress party. Sitaram Kesri is Bihar and he was insulted. Since 1980, only 2 people outside the family, and you are lecturing on democracy. And even today, someone like Digvijaya Singh has gone on record and said that whoever becomes the Congress president will work under Gandhi family.
Let me get the experts in. Let me get Shipra as well as Kapil Madan into the conversation. Shipra, if Mr. Kharge were to get elected, and there's a very great chance that he will because he is now the official candidate, Mr. Tharoor is seen as the quote-unquote rebel candidate. The fact is, an 80-year-old Mr. Kharge would have been taking over the reins of this party from a 50-year-old Rahul Gandhi, who was the last full-time president that the Congress party had. Now, surely, if this is a generational change, this is a generational change in the reverse. An 80-year-old is taking over from a 50-year-old. I mean, how is that supposed to work?
Absolutely. So there are 2 clear things which we need to, really address to. That first, Congress party under the leadership of Rahul Gandhi, they had promised that internal democracy they are really worried about. And second thing, that new blood and young youth will be in the forefront. So I think both these promises, the coming of 80-year-old Kharge Sahab, though he has immense experience and he comes as a very astute politician, with 50 years of his political career. But the fact is, as Tharoor stands, as a rebel candidate or as another contesting candidate. I think the entire focus or the spotlight should have been, within the Congress party or the G23 members also should have been onto the Tharoor. But on the other side, we are seeing that the entire the media is saying that the blessings of Sonia Gandhi or blessings of the Gandhi family is with Mr. Kharge. So both on both the fronts, I think the young members of the Congress party would feel cheated. And second thing, coming back to Rajasthan politics also,
okay.
One of the biggest promises again was to give the leadership to the leader or pilot who had actually led from the front and who was considered to be the leader, of the future. But with the coming of Gehlot in the fray, and he was also trying to retain both the positions. He was also trying to keep the position of CM, and he was also vying for for the president post also. So this whole situation and this whole scenario brings me to one very interesting episode. I would just narrate, that in the past also in Rajasthan politics, when Sukhadia was 17, the longest serving chief minister of Rajasthan, 17 years he served. I'm just giving you a glimpse how Congress party has been operating, and this is nothing new. Whatever I've heard from other speakers also, that the reign would be with the Gandhi family, and how that when Sukhadia was the chief minister of Rajasthan, and he and Indira Gandhi. There was faction at the center, at the central politics in the Congress party, that one faction wanted some other candidate to be contesting for the presidential position, and Indira Gandhi had decided on to other candidates. And the people who had voted against Indira's bill, because she had said that Antaratma ki awaaz par aap vote dijiyega, though the other person was the official candidate, and Indira Gandhi had launched another candidate, B.B. Giri. So the people, or the political people who had voted in Rajasthan, I'm talking about in the context of Rajasthan, the people who had voted against the will of Indira Gandhi, they were removed from the post, and the people who had supported her, beyond internal democracy, what the official candidate was another person, and Indira Gandhi's candidate was another person. So, and that's how, after 17 years of very good tenure as chief minister, Sukhadia was removed, and 105 MLAs had gone to Indira Gandhi to say that there will be spell of darkness in Rajasthan if he is removed as chief minister, and she had categorically said that after darkness there is light. So I'll decide. Where the light
Let me ask Kapil Madan. Let me ask Kapil Madan. One of the other problems is, and I don't think, I don't think problem is the right word, but one of the issues that the Congress party has to confront is both the candidates are from South India. Mr. Kharge is from Gulbarga. Mr. Tharoor is from Thiruvananthapuram. It's not just about being able to speak Hindi. It's about connecting with the Hindi heartland, connecting with the North Indian electorates, because it's again the same problem with Bharat Jodo. If Congress party has to take on the BJP, it has to take on the BJP in the heartland states where it's a two-way fight between Congress and BJP. So whether it is Rajasthan, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Uttarakhand, these are the states where it's a direct fight between Congress and BJP, and BJP won maximum number of seats in these states. Congress needs to make inroads in these states. Unfortunately, neither Mr. Kharge nor Mr. Tharoor are going to help make inroads in these North Indian states.
Now, Zaka, I think we are reading too much into the language, because I'll tell you a simple reason why. Whenever a state goes to an election, you have your PCC. For both the parties, for the Congress and for the BJP, they have their respective state units that work cohesively with the central leadership. And though the language is important, however, to say that if a president comes from North India, or maybe for a South India, if he's coming from South India, then there could be an impact in North India. Then it could be a reverse also. If the president is from the North India, going by your logic, you will have the similar problems in South India.
One second. Kapil, let's look at the numbers. South India, and I come from the South, has 120 seats. The remaining 300 seats are in North India. You need to start winning in those remaining 300 seats. Out of those 300 seats, I think the BJP won 200 plus. That's where you need to start winning. Because if you don't win there, there's no hope. You can't match up the numbers, because there isn't enough numbers in the remaining southern states. And mind you, in the southern states, you're also fighting with regional parties. You're fighting with the YSR Congress. You're fighting with the KCR. You're fighting with the CPIM in Kerala. And of course, DMK, ADMK in Tamil Nadu. That's a different ballgame altogether, and Congress will get whatever it gets in South India. But if you're not competent in the 300 seats of Northern India, then you don't stand a chance against the BJP.
No, Zaka, I think your logic is premised on the fact that if there is a leader from the South India, he will not be able to create an impact in North India. This is what you're trying to say, essentially. I would say that you're just trying to put the apple before the cart before the horse, because here we need to understand that how an election is contested and how an election is. Now, it is not a thing. Of course, a leader, a president of any political party plays a very important role, but we need to understand that he has the entire system machinery that works with him, with the state unit to contest the elections. That's what I'm trying to say.
He may have the machinery. The point is, why should voters be inspired for such a choice? That is the thing. When Mr. Modi... When Mr. Modi was announced as the BJP's prime ministerial candidate, he managed to capture the imagination of non-BJP voters. Please tell me, how is Mr. Kharge going to capture, and I'll ask Mudit Agarwal this, how is Mr. Kharge going to capture the imagination of non-Congress voters? The voters that Tharoor says, the non-Hindutva-wadis who voted for Mr. Modi in 14 and 19, how will you bring them back? Mudit Agarwal.
Give me 10 seconds to respond to BJP spokesperson. I don't remember in my living memory ever BJP had elections in which they filed nomination and voting happened for BJP president. And also, can you name me just one BJP president which was not selected from RSS or who is not from RSS? You will not find any. As far as position of BJP president is concerned, I believe one should just go and ask Mr. Nadda how he is feeling working under Mr. Modi and Amit Shah, who are taking all the decisions. A president is just a rubber stamp. As far as Mr. Kharge is concerned, I don't know who is going to win. You see, it is too presumptuous of anyone to say who is going to win. Let the Congress delegates decide. And it's very snobbish of you, Mr. Zaka, to talk about Mr. Kharge like that. He's a seasoned leader. In fact, both our candidates are very seasoned, and it's a very good choice that is there for Congress delegates to decide. And, sometimes I feel, especially in English press, you have this, a bias towards good-looking, English-speaking, leaders. So you think that is India.
One of your two candidates is good-looking. One of your two candidates is very good-looking, good English-speaking. Rahul Gandhi is also very good-looking. He also speaks English very well.
Mr. Zaka, please do not interrupt.
I'm not interrupting you. You think I have a bias towards good-looking people. You have good-looking leaders. That's not why you're not winning elections. Mr. Agarwal.
The way you described him.
I will ask you one final question. I got to wrap up in 30 seconds. I'll ask you one final question. I'll wrap up in 30 seconds. Can you guarantee that come the 8th of October, when the final day for removal of nominations, the withdrawal of nominations, that this will still be an election or this will be a unanimous choice? That Mr. Tharoor will not withdraw his nomination, can you say?
So, can I ask you this thing? This is a democratic election, right? Who am I to say what Mr. Tharoor is going to do? Who am I to direct him? It's for him to decide. No,
Mr. Agarwal, I love debating with you. Please come back on the 8th of October. I will tell my guest team to please, ensure that Mr. Agarwal comes back on the 8th of... No, I'm not saying anything. I will be here. You will also be here. Let's meet again. Let's meet again on the 8th of October. Muditji, let's meet. Muditji, yeah, you'll be there. I'll be here. Let's meet again on the 8th of October and let's see which of the two comes true. Thank you very much. I wish you well. I wish the Congress party well. I wish both the candidates well. Let's see, as they say in love and war, may the best man win. That's a wrap. Akanksha joining you with the biggest exclusive.
Convenient political argument that because PFI has been banned, so RSS must also be banned. After coming to power in 2013, Siddaramaiah government approved the dropping of 176 cases filed against 1,600 PFI activists.
You cannot, on the one hand, empower a nation with F-16s for anti-terror ops, while saying, hey, we found you patronizing Ayman al-Zawahiri. The Haqqani network has been propped up as 50% of the government in Taliban in Afghanistan by Pakistanis.
The Congress High Command completely underestimated how much support Ashok Gehlot has within the legislature party and completely overestimated Sachin Pilot's support within the CLP.
Central Bureau of Investigation arrested Vijay Nair, close aide of Deputy Chief Minister Manish Sisodia. And as per the agency,
Vijay Nair received 6% commission from liquor barons. Can the Aam Aadmi Party continue to call this witch hunt or vendetta?
A tropical storm, and people have been urged to stay put in shelters.
Queen Elizabeth's death certificate states that the 96-year-old died of old age. The document was signed by her daughter, Princess Anne. Britain's longest reigning monarch died at her Balmoral estate in Scotland on the 8th of September, around 3.5 hours before the news was announced to the world. Vladimir Putin's partial mobilization orders have triggered massive traffic jams at the Russia-Georgia border.
The mass exodus of men, either alone or with their families, began on the 21st of September, shortly after Putin's address to the nation. It has only been growing since then. With airline tickets mostly sold out or completely unaffordable, Russian men filled up their cars and joined the long lines snaking on roads towards the borders. According to the government of Georgia, more than 53,000 Russians have entered the country since last week. There is rising fear of travel bans and possible border closures, with reports of some men already being turned away by Russian bodyguards. Putin announced a partial mobilization to add at least 300,000 troops to its forces in Ukraine. In Russia, almost every man is considered a reservist until the age of 65. Having personal combat or military service experience is the main criterion in the call-up.
All right, Russia will formally annex 4 Ukrainian territories Friday. The signing ceremony will take place in the Kremlin. 4 Ukrainian regions which have been occupied by the Russian army, which includes Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. Moscow has organized referendums in all these 4 regions. This move comes 8 years after Moscow annexed Crimea. It's a big blow. Indian pacer Jasprit Bumrah has been ruled out for the T20 World Cup after he complained of back pain. Bumrah did not play the first T20 against South Africa on Wednesday. Bumrah travelled to Bengaluru to undergo fresh scans on his back. After Team India's big win on Wednesday, fans got a glimpse of Virat Kohli's video call with wife Anushka Sharma. We'll leave you with that. A lawyer tried to run over a woman traffic constable near Mumbai, and this is what ensued.
The constable had seized the scooter of an advocate for alleged violation of traffic rules. The scooter was kept in a go-down meant for seized vehicles for further legal procedures. But the lawyer landed up at the go-down to take away the two-wheeler. When the cop tried to stop the lawyer from exiting the building, he knocked her down with the scooter and tried to flee. He even tried to assault some men who came and confronted.
Hello and a very warm welcome to Biggest Exclusive tonight with me, Akanksha Swaroop. Now today, Russia is annexing the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson and Zaporizhia regions of Ukraine. This after holding what it called referendums in occupied areas of Ukraine. Now Kiev and the Western governments have called these referendums a sham. They say the votes have breached international law. The West has called Russia's move coercive and non-representative. But Russia has gone ahead with the annexation today in a ceremony in the St. George's Hall of the Grand Kremlin Palace that you can see on your screens today. Now, it should also be noted that today's ceremony takes place 8 years after Russia seized Crimea from Ukraine. So the question that we are going to ask is, will the annexation now only prolong this war that is already 7 months down? right, so let's also try and bring you the areas that we are looking at in terms of annexation today. This has been a big move. As we said, the first historic move was when Crimea was annexed by Russia, and today this is a look of Russia's annexation. Remember, now Russia after this annexation will be occupying almost 18% of Ukraine, and that's massive in terms of the war. Crimea annexed in 2014 already. Then let's also look at the other regions that will be annexed. We are looking at Luhansk and Donetsk, which have already been the separatist areas. That is the Donbas region as far as Luhansk and Donetsk is concerned. Zaporizhia, again, a very crucial area. Remember, the nuclear reactor happens to be there. It's equally fragile, and the UN was pushing for this area to be a military-free zone. But what happens to this fragile area now is something that we'll have to look at. Kherson is another region that has been declared independent along with Zaporizhia. What is the big picture of the annexation today? Russian flag over nearly 100,000 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory. As I told you, that is 18% of Ukraine now under Russia's control already. Putin's message is very clear. The attack on Russian territory will invite full retaliation. Of course, he's also gone ahead and threatened nuclear action as well. Thirdly, Putin's ratings have had spiked post 2014 Crimea annexation. Will this happen again? Because as we all know, previous polls were indicating that Putin's popularity was dipping down, but the current annexation, will this bring his popularity back? Let's not forget there have been protests going on already in Russia. Now, fourthly, annexation has made the negotiation impossible. That's what Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine has to say. Fifth, test of Russia's red line soon as Ukraine keeps up the offensive. What we'll have to watch out is whether Ukraine will manage to step up its offensive, and to what extent will NATO go to defend Ukraine. Let's try and get in a sense of ground zero. And for that, I'm joined in by Sanjay Suri. Remember, CNN News 18 is one of the few channels who have sent someone to cover this war. And Sanjay Suri happens to join me live from Kharkiv. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for joining the broadcast today. Now, since you are there, what has been the sentiment and the situation on ground level? We've seen that grand ceremony happen in the Kremlin Palace. It's been a big move. Now that Zaporizhia and Kherson have been granted independence, what will this now translate in terms of annexation?
Well, this annexation is in name only. This is a claim that has been made by Putin. Certainly, it is not going to be accepted in Ukraine. President Zelensky has said very firmly, we will not give an inch of territory. Right. He is backed by the US, by Western Europe, and quite apart from that support for Ukraine against Putin, Putin's own plans seem a little unconvincing. He had said Zaporizhia is now Russian territory. Well, that's not quite the case. The center of Zaporizhia is controlled by Ukraine. The mayor is Ukrainian. In the Donetsk Republic, we've had one town, Lyman, that has been taken by Ukrainian forces. Russian forces are on the pushback in that town. So these four areas claimed by Putin are not quite entirely controlled by him, not entirely controlled by Russia. So it is a little difficult to figure out at the moment, and we've had no explanation or elucidation from Russian authorities how this split within these regions will be played out, because Russia does not control these regions. Right. So is this going to mean that people who are Ukrainian and in these areas become prisoners in effect within these areas? Will the city center of Zaporizhia become a prisoner to the rest of Zaporizhia controlled by Russians? A lot of these aspects are not very clear, quite apart from the fact that Putin has absolutely no support from this around the world, not even from his closest allies.
And since you spoke about the status of Ukrainians, I'd like to ask you, do people also see the referendums as a sham, which is what the West has also been alleging? Russia, of course, continues to counter by saying that these are not sham referendums.
Well, these cannot really be a matter of opinion. We've had what are claimed to have been referendums, but we've had no transparency in the referendums, no transparency in communication on how these were conducted, who received the ballot papers, no independent oversight, who voted, who did not. The fact is that Russian speaking does not mean Russian supporting necessarily. Here in Kharkiv, a lot of people are Russian speaking. The majority are Russian speaking.
Right.
And yet this is the area where there has been such a strong pushback from Ukraine. So these assumptions that are sometimes made a bit hastily don't quite stand. And then we've had Putin saying all sorts of things about rights and wrongs, about the rights of Russia and the wrongs of the West, as he calls it. But this on a day when civilians were killed in Zaporizhia for just going to pick up their relatives. And the same day, there's a rock concert in a Red Square. This does not quite, this kind of triumph, this kind of rhetoric, this kind of concert does not quite sit easy with what he did to the civilians in Zaporizhia.
But Sanjay, the supporters of Russia always latch on to the argument provided when it comes to the annexation of Crimea. They said that, the world couldn't stop Russia from annexing Crimea from Ukraine. What will the annexation of these 4 territories now mean, and also the partial mobilization for the ongoing war in Ukraine?
Well, Crimea, Russia got away with. The difference between Crimea and this is that Russia will find it very difficult to get away with this. The kind of solidarity we've seen around the world against this attempt at annexation, we certainly cannot call it an annexation. This kind of unified response and determination against allowing Russia to get away with it is something we've seen now. We haven't seen it before. And whatever the history and whatever the rights and wrongs of the past, people are taking a stand, and they've taken a very firm stand. It's not just the UN Secretary General, it's countries around the world that have taken this stand.
Many thanks to you, Sanjay, for bringing in all those inputs. Stay safe. And with that, let's also open the dais over to our guests. I'm joined in by Mr. Fred Weir, who's a political analyst and a Russian affairs expert. He's joining us live from Russia as well. I'm also joined in by Alexandra Matvichuk, who's the head of the Center of Civil Liberties in Ukraine. I'm also joined in by Ukrainian MP, Sviatoslav Yurash, who's joining us on the phone line right now. Many thanks to all 3 of you for joining. Fred, if I could start with you. Of course, I'm sure the opinion is on the contrary when it comes to Ukraine. But when it comes to the annexation, what's the opinion like within Russia? We've seen all those protests happen. And what happens to the whole process of annexation as far as particularly Zaporizhia and Kherson are concerned? Because today they've been declared independent.
I think we can all agree that it's illegal under international law.
I'm glad you said that.
And Russia, I think, is aware of that. They have, so in this sense, they are not just annexing these territories, which is the intention, but they are challenging the existing international order. This is true. And it's also true that these territories are active war zones. It's quite extraordinary to do this during, those very territories are still a matter of contest. And so it's hard for me, as long as I've studied Russia, to understand what they are doing. But the import of it will be, from the Russian point of view, to move the border of Russia right up to the front line in the war zone. That will legally enable Russia to use its regular army on those territories, including conscripts. But it will also cement that Russian claim to make it irreversible from their point of view. And this pretty well, if we thought negotiations were possible, and in recent weeks we really haven't, but if we had thought there was any hope for it, that's all gone now.
Right. Alexandra, if I could bring you in on this. The UN chief, Antonio Guterres, has called Russia's move a violation of international law. If that was the case, now Crimea wouldn't have been annexed. Will this, by any chance, stop Putin?
Well, first of all, I'm also a professor of international law, and I can assure you that the so-called referendums, sham or fake referendums, are nothing but violations of international law, which are obvious to any person. You know, when you violate international law, it is inevitable that sooner or later you'll be punished for that. It will happen, but it might take some time. But what we see now, we see that Russia has already been strategically defeated, and Ukrainian army is very successfully conducting counteroffensive. So it's only a matter of time when the whole territory of Ukraine will be liberated from Russian army, and Russia will be brought to international legal responsibility, including all war criminals, starting with Putin.
But Sviatoslav, if I could bring you in on this, if Ukraine was to step up its offensive, it should have been done back in 2014 in the case of Crimea. Many analysts are also posing the question, how will Ukraine be able to defend itself? Now, I know there have been territories which Ukraine has managed to reclaim, but how much of it will be reclaimed in terms of these four very crucial territories now?
With everything, we are the generation that
right, that question's for
Sviatoslav. Crimea, Donbass, Kherson, Zaporizhia, and Kharkiv, and every part of Ukraine shall be brought back into Ukraine. We are defending successfully. We are taking the offensive and liberating our territories, be that around our capital in Kiev, be that around Kharkiv, and now as we push onwards in the south, we are giving Putin all the reasons for why he is desperate to present any kind of results and to his population. The fact on the ground is we are beating him, and we shall continue doing that until Putin leaves our country alone and allows us to decide our own destiny.
Sviatoslav Yurash, I'd also like to ask you, you know, when Putin met Prime Minister Modi, the fact of the matter is that he did say that it is Ukraine which is not open to negotiation. And in fact, President Zelensky has also gone ahead on record and saying that there's no scope left for negotiation. Why so?
Time and time again, Putin demands of Ukraine capitulation of its territorial integrity, sovereignty, and its ability to choose its own alliances. We cannot abrogate our statehood. Mr. Putin wants our nation to be a part of his own project, whatever that project is. He has stated so very clearly. Every single part of national law is about allowing states to choose that, to choose their future. And for us, Mr. Putin's offer of negotiations is nothing but noose that he wants to tie around our necks. We try negotiating with him. We tried that for 8 years of the Minsk process, when we were promised the restoration of the eastern regions of Ukraine. And nothing happened, time and time and time again. So now for us, when we are clearly defeating and showing to the world of how empty, how vacuous that dictator is, we will not be stopped until we get our country back.
Fred Bear, if I could bring you in on this, we've heard the Russian president also go on record to admit certain lapses that have happened, whether it is in terms of mobilization, sending more troops to the front lines, or even in terms of why the protests are happening, those arrests during the protests. Is the Russian president right now under pressure? And what, in your opinion, how do you foresee him making his next move?
Well, the mobilization is unrestricted. So he, listening to the Russian media, opposition media, it's quite obvious that Russia is mobilizing millions of troops. Alas, these are completely untrained and unready troops that are basically trying to find every way to not be a part of this unnecessary conflict. And the fact on the ground is that those Russian troops are getting defeated in every part of Ukraine. So I'm not sure how these troops, which are unwilling to actually take part in
I'm going to request you to hold on to those thoughts. That question was in fact for Fred Weir. Fred, if you could also take that question.
Yeah, I think the mobilization is underway. It's true that a lot of people, a lot of my friends, don't want their sons going, and it has changed the temperature here because it's one thing when you have like volunteers and contract soldiers and those separatist militias doing the fighting, which has been the case for 7 months, and quite another thing when it's your husband, father, son being sent down there to do it. However, I think that the mobilization will go on. I would not underestimate the Russian potential to mobilize, hundreds of thousands of more troops, train them up and arm them, even though we do focus on those people at the border or trying to escape somewhere. That's the small minority. I think, I've seen the Voinkomat here in Moscow. It's full of people who are receiving their kit and being deployed out for more training. So I do think, I'm not advocating this, I'm just saying that by December or January, Russia will have a much larger force that will be quite capable to go on the offensive in Ukraine.
Right, and how the NATO plans to counter that is something also we'll have to look at and focus. I'm going to request you gentlemen to hold on to those thoughts. We also have a host of international reactions coming in from very crucial personalities. Let's also listen into those reactions and I'll shortly come back to you after that.
The United States will never recognize Russia's claims on Ukraine's sovereign territory. This so-called referenda was a sham, an absolute sham. The results were manufactured in Moscow. And the true will of the Ukrainian people is evident every day as they sacrifice their lives to save their people and maintain the independence of their country and in defense of freedom as well. Russia's assault on Ukraine in pursuit of Putin's imperial ambitions is a flagrant violation of the UN Charter and the basic principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity.
The United Nations General Assembly is equally clear. In its landmark Friendly Relations Declaration of 24 October 1970, repeatedly cited as stating rules of general international law by the International Court of Justice, the General Assembly declared that the territory of a state shall not be the object of acquisition by another state resulting from the threat or use of force, and that no territorial acquisition resulting from the threat or use of force shall be recognized as legal.
This shame and a lie with some kind of pseudo-referendums, confessions of some sort, and annexations will end for Russia in even greater shame. No one should take part in a shameful war. Dagestanists, Chechens, Ingush, Ossetians, and Circassians should not die in Ukraine, nor any other people who ended up under the Russian flag.
All right, those were some reactions coming in from three of the world's most prominent personalities. My guests continue to stay with me. Alexandra Matvichuk, if I could bring you in on the issue of mobilization. As we all know, that the partial mobilization ordered by the Russian president is the first ever since World War II. Having said that, you also heard what Fred Weir had to say. He's saying that he sounds very confident that by January, Russia will be able to prop up and, of course, fortify its defenses. What is the strategy that Ukraine has in mind, rather the West and, of course, NATO as well? To what extent is NATO going to defend Ukraine now?
Well, just one small correction. My last name is Mereshko, not Matvichuk. Well, and regarding your question.
My apologies to you.
Well, when you listen to Putin or Lavrov, they say that they are waging war not only against Ukraine, but against NATO, against, as they put it, the collective West. But NATO is not involved in this war, because NATO is defense alliance. It can happen only if Russia, for example, attacks one of the NATO member countries. But how can NATO help us? NATO is helping, countries which are member states of NATO, they're helping us by providing military support, military aid, and technical support. And this is the most important support, the most important aid right now for us to survive and to defend ourselves effectively against external Russian aggression.
All right, Fred, how do you react to that now? Because, of course, there is an escalation which is going to be imminent. Is there any sign or hope for peace left for Ukraine and Russia?
Well, I am just in despair over the possibilities here. Russia is a big, powerful country. As far as I can see, the Putin regime is pretty solid. It's not panicking. The mobilization is taking place, and it's not just that they will put more troops on the ground, they will change their tactics. Until now, for instance, they have not bombed the railroad bridges over the Dnieper. They have left alone the railway system in general, for the most part. I think they are going to become far more aggressive in terms of destroying basic infrastructure, as well as when the ground hardens in the winter, probably going on the offensive. I'm terribly impressed with how the Ukrainians have fought. They've shown a lot of resistance and a lot of amazing spirit. I know several Russian war correspondents, and they also say that they admire Ukrainian fighting spirit. This is such a huge tragedy, and I'm afraid that Putin has made it even harder today to perhaps come to some kind of an accommodation, because wars all have to end. And they seldom do end with full satisfaction or full realization of international law, as much as you want to believe that aggressors will be punished. All through history, they often get their way. So I don't know, but this is really today a deepening tragedy, and I can't see any way out of it.
Alexandra, there's the other question that comes to mind, which is now with the annexation happening, especially Zaporizhia, will also come to Moscow's nuclear subjection. And we all know how fragile the nuclear reactor is at a time when the UN has been pushing for a demilitarized zone around Zaporizhia. What is going to be the impact of the Russian occupation around Zaporizhia?
Well, as you can see, by blackmailing the whole world and threatening to use nuclear weapons, we can see that Russia and Putin is nothing but a nuclear terrorist, and it's very dangerous. But I still believe that he is bluffing, even though he might use any kind of provocation at the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. It might happen, because Putin is dangerous. He has cornered himself. But to prevent this, we need to do one thing altogether, the whole world. We should completely isolate the crazy dictator, because Putin is behaving as Hitler during the Second World War. He's trying to drag into his grave the whole country. And to prevent this, we should show more solidarity, and we should totally isolate Russia as rogue state, as terrorist state.
Fred Weir, is it fair to say that Putin is bluffing?
I have spent a lot of time asking a lot of Russian experts, foreign policy people, exactly this question, because it really is important to know what he meant in that speech last week, where he said, anyone who threatens our territorial integrity, because that was a change from Russian nuclear doctrine.
Right.
Russian nuclear doctrine says that nuclear weapons would be used only in the event of an existential threat to the state, or when nuclear weapons have already been used against Russia. He moved the needle on that. Maybe he meant it, maybe he didn't. But whatever the case, once Russia declares that these territories are now part of Russian Federation, then the nuclear deterrent will apply to them. It doesn't necessarily mean that if someone attacks those territories, they will fire back with nuclear weapons. In fact, Ukrainian forces have been attacking Russian territory from the beginning of this war. So the Russians don't shoot back with nukes. But this has changed the situation and made it like not only more dangerous.
I'm so sorry to interrupt because I'm running short of time. And my last question to both of you, let me actually take that from my second guest as well. How critical will be the UNSC resolution now and the responses of India and China with regards to the UNSC resolution condemning the annexation referendums that will be passed today? Alexandra, can you hear me?
You mean, yeah, it's a question to me.
Yes.
Sorry.
Right.
The resolution, a UN resolution, if we're talking about General Assembly, has only recommendatory character. Obligatory character has resolutions of Security Council. But unfortunately, because Russia will be using its veto power, we cannot hope to get such resolution. But at the same time, I'm sure that Putin threats and his blackmail, his bluffing, will cause such countries as India and China to understand that Putin is dangerous. And they will also try to influence him, to put pressure on him to stop his very dangerous for the whole world behavior.
All right. Many thanks to you, Alexandra and Fred Weir, for joining our discussion today. And with that, it's a wrap of this newscast. And before I do that, let's also bring you another story. When we talk about designer labels, the first thought that comes to our mind is that it will be expensive or out of reach for a common man. Now, a new marketplace called Brand New that curates lifestyle brands by designers all over the world, Brand New is dispelling this myth by now bringing affordable, well-designed products in apparel, jewelry, accessories, home and living category. They host live pop-ups and digital experience centers for products, touch and feel. Come and experience a unique shopping experience that is called Brand New. You can check it out online at shopbrandnew.com. And with that, it's a quick wrap of biggest exclusive tonight. Up next is Plain Speak with Shivani.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us. You're watching Plain Speak with me, Shivani Gupta. After playing musical chairs for weeks, it's official now. Congress Thiruvananthapuram MP Shashi Tharoor and leader of opposition Mallikarjun Kharge will fight it out for the Congress's top job. Both senior Congress leaders filed their nominations today. Kharge's candidature was in fact proposed by as many as over 30 party leaders, including Ashok Gehlot, former candidate, another former candidate Digvijaya Singh, Pramod Tiwari and PL Punia. In fact, many members of the so-called G23 also backed him. What does that mean for the rebel Shashi Tharoor then? Has he been abandoned? In fact, what does this mean for dissenting voices overall in the Congress party? Are they dead from here on? It is quite clear that Kharge is ahead in this race by far and is all set to be the first non-Gandhi Congress president in 24 years. Of course, provided there is no sting in the tail still. Remember, both the leaders belong to south of India, with minimum or almost no connect in the Hindi belt. Head-to-head versus the BJP, Congress lost 90% of the seats in 2014 and 2019 Lok Sabha elections in this Hindi belt. This is where they needed the biggest boost, but both faces will fall short of that requirement. The biggest question tonight, though, is, has the Congress managed to project that this was indeed a real exercise in opening up its leadership? We'll take that to our guests in just a bit, but first up, a quick SWOT analysis of both the candidates, their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. So let's go to Mallikarjun Kharge now. His strength is He's close to the Gandhi family. He also has vast organizational and administrative experience because he's been in high positions of the party. He's also, of course, held constitutional positions. His weakness is that he's 80, age is not on his side. He also has no connect outside of Karnataka. In fact, even in Karnataka, some could argue whether he has prevailing impact. What is his opportunity though? The opportunity is very much the fact that in Karnataka, the assembly elections are due next and him becoming the next Congress chief could well enthuse the party there. But what is the threat as far as Mallikarjun Kharge is concerned? He's going to be seen as controlled by the Gandhis. Basically the Gandhi candidate, possibly not with much leg room or leeway as far as being able to do what the Congress chief needs to do, making some unpopular choices. Let's look at the SWOT analysis of Shashi Tharoor. Now, he's articulate. He has an appeal amongst the upworldly mobile. You could call them the youth, the educated, the middle class. But that also brings us to his weakness, which is that he's not really a mass leader. He also lacks organizational experience. Even though he has been an MP multiple times, can he really handle something as difficult as the top job of the Congress party? What is his opportunity though? If Shashi Tharoor was to become the next Congress chief, that can well and truly be seen as a fresh start for the Congress party because he's been making discordant noises. He's not happy with the way the Congress is running so far. If he wins, that can truly be said as a fresh start. But what's the threat associated with Shashi Tharoor? Apart from the fact that he made a blunder today with a distorted map of India as part of his manifesto, he also, remember, had to quit as the MOS. He faced a controversy related to an IPL franchise and an inquiry over his wife's death as well. So there are, of course, issues that Shashi Tharoor can be attacked with. The biggest question is not so much who will win this race, but whether the Congress presidential race was rigged to begin with, making Kharge the obvious winner now with the nominations, the proposals, and of course, just what we've seen play out over the last 2 weeks or so.
The Congress president has assured me that the Congress party